Welcome to Good Life. I'm Dean Wilson. So glad you're with us. Wherever you're finding us at TV Santa Barbara here locally or at goodlifetelevision.org, we've been so excited to see so many of you joining us there from all over the world. And we're glad you're with us. We're talking about the good stuff with good people. We've had entrepreneurs and executives and overcomers. We've had young people, famous people, not famous people. We've had a really incredible group of people. And it just is a reminder to me that there's so many wonderful people walking around. And when we can stop and talk to them and find out their story and find out what they're passionate about, it's a fantastic thing. You can also find us on all the social media platforms, Good Life TV. We'd love to have you join us there. I'm so excited about my guest today. He is the executive director of an organization called Leading From Within. Ed France is with me. Welcome.
Dean, thank you so much.
Thanks for coming. You're a gaucho.
I am.
And so and I was reading about it, but where were you born and brought up?
I grew up in Palos Verdes, which is a little beach town there in the South Bay of Los Angeles County.
Yep.
And I made it about 100 miles north for college and really had some amazing experiences and learned so much here in this community, and that's a big part of why I've stayed.
Yeah, it's not a bad place to hang out. Ed has a long career in as volunteer, social entrepreneur, nonprofit executive. He's for 2 years he's been in his current role, but I want to talk a little bit about kind of your career and just your perspective. I was fascinated to read a lot about your thoughts and your perspective on things, which I'll get to in a second. But kind of start with your career from UCSB and kind of the road you've traveled.
Yeah. So I've always had a real passion for the environment and really how we as humans interact with the environment, right? With sort of the cultural ecology. And because we are a big part of our environment, right? We shape it in different ways. And so I was extremely fortunate to get involved in environmental advocacy when I was a gaucho at UCSB. And actually, that was one of my first kind of formative leadership experiences. We had an aha moment when the campus group that I was a part of really felt like there was a wall, kind of a ceiling to what we could achieve. And we were able to get together with all the different UC campuses and actually get support and come up with ways that we could work with the whole UC system. And actually, that was a big part of the green building, what we called clean energy or renewable energy commitment from the campuses.
Wow.
Ultimately, transportation policies, sustainable food policies. It was really amazing. I really like to think of the university systems, certainly the UCs, Westmont, Santa Barbara City College. We're so privileged here in this community to have these living laboratories. These learning communities that how the community itself works in day-to-day function is part of that learning process itself.
Right. So you guys did something.
I like to think so.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like it.
We learned kind of the edge of policy and change, and I again, that was a formative experience for me.
Yeah.
To kind of see what is possible in terms of really focused steps to contribute towards more, environmental sustainability.
Yeah.
And I decided to kind of take that into my career.
So yeah, it's amazing what a small group of people can do when they get together and they're unified and they're in agreement about what they're passionate about. So that's another topic, but
no. But Dean, actually, I love that because that's one of my favorite quotes is Margaret Mead, is never doubt what a small group of dedicated people can do to change the world. Indeed, that's the only thing that ever happens.
Yeah, right. I remember that quote actually. That's very true. It's very true. So where did that take you? I mean, post-grad.
So pretty immediately, it took me to work for the city of Santa Barbara, which again was a formative experience. It kind of took me into trash or garbage.
Really?
I got really into how we handle waste, and I was so fortunate. Again, this sort of the opportunities that we have in this community for mentorship. One of my mentors taught a class. He's not a professor, but Paul Rellis, who was a co-founder with Hal Conklin of the Community Environmental Council, taught a class at UCSB on solid waste management. I took that class. I then offered to help him for the next year for that same class, sort of as a TA. Turns out I became the recycling coordinator for the city of Santa Barbara.
Really?
And I got to apply that sort of intellectual curiosity into my first real job.
Wow. And so what did you do in that job to try to make a difference?
So we're all about leading by example, which of course is any group that you're in that's dedicated to leading by example is kind of, I feel like, the right group to be a part of.
Right, yeah, good idea.
And so we were dedicated to all the city facilities really being on it about waste diversion and how much we were recycling and how much we were avoiding creating waste in the first place. And we made some major changes. We helped apply that to city parks as well. We actually took on green purchasing, and we had the city's first green purchasing policy so that we were buying more recyclable materials to begin with.
Oh.
And we changed what materials we used for custodial work and all the cleaning for all city facilities and things like that.
Yeah.
And actually, a lot of that work came together and became part of the city's sustainability program, which is now the city's Department of Sustainability and Resilience.
Fascinating. You know, I had a friend who told me, he was kind of educating me about the environment, because obviously we're a lot of people are thinking about the environment right now, and I think that's a good idea. He was also mentioning that we have made a lot of progress. If you look at air and water, like statistically over the last 30, 40 years. So that's always been a kind of an encouragement as I think about this, that we've made some progress. There's a ways to go. I mean, and I know guys like you are probably way ahead of us as far as where we need to go, but it's kind of encouraging at the same time. Would you agree?
Dean, I think you bring up such an important point. There's a lot of challenges that we face. But if we don't look back and see the challenges that we've already surmounted,
right,
how are we going to have the encouragement to really move forward?
Right.
I think there's a number of examples. Think about how we took on ozone, right?
Yeah,
the hole in the ozone layer, right? We made substantial international progress on that, right? And that's not an issue that we really talk about because that doesn't need attention anymore,
right, in
the same ways. Think about lead. The levels of lead in the atmosphere were crazy, 30, 40 years ago. They're so much lower now because of policy changes that we've made.
Yeah.
Right. We are capable of making very meaningful changes that can be done smoothly and well.
Yeah. Right. I think that is important to remember. It's like having, memorial to, okay, let's not forget this happened, which kind of makes you think the next thing could happen. That happened. It's an interesting way of thinking. So you end up leading the Santa Barbara Bicycle Coalition. How did that happen?
Yeah, so I was extremely fortunate. I and a number of folks that I ended up kind of finding, we all found each other, had a sort of vision of something that we wanted to do, kind of just like a community project. So in my early 20s, I was working for the city. I had this idea that we should have a community bike shop that helps people who, especially on the lower economic levels, they can't spend a lot of money on a bike, have a good bike, right? And part of the rationale there was I was a bike commuter. It was something that really, like, riding a bike on a daily basis helped me, physiologically stay happy and kind of buoyant, right? Like when I'm kind of feeling blue, I'll go on a bike ride and it does wonders, right? So that's something just for me, like, I really valued. And I love the ability to actually go somewhere on a bike.
Yeah.
And I would notice that a lot of people in this community were clearly getting to where they needed to go on a bike, and to be a total sort of bike snob on what, like, were not great bikes that didn't fit them. that looked like you would see brakes, you know, like kind of like fully open, like that doesn't look like that works, right? Like things that were not safe. And so the idea was, could we come together and kind of support people to have bikes that work for them? Just a really simple, small concept.
Yeah.
Turns out a few years into that, that became a job, right? That merged with the Bike Coalition. We ended up founding 3 different BC Centro, or Bike Center in Spanish, community do-it-yourself bike repair shops, one in Santa Maria, one at City College, and of course the shop downtown. We ended up bringing bike education programs to just about every school, every elementary school in Santa Barbara County. And we became involved with different local governments to think about ways that bike ways and systems could be improved. And I'm so proud of that, because, you know, it's amazing when you come together with great people and you do things that you love.
Yeah.
When you look back on it, what can be achieved?
Yeah.
So I really think we achieved a lot.
Yeah. What a great idea. And where are they now? Are they still going?
They're still going. Yeah. So there are BC Centro shops, which the idea is actually a do-it-yourself bike repair shop, which of course during COVID hasn't been feasible, but those shops are still open for low to no cost community support. The education programs have been going in different ways. Everybody's adapted. And I'm so proud of the team at the Bicycle Coalition, which is actually now merged and is a larger organization that works with the Coalition for Sustainable Transportation. That's all one big organization now. And I'm so proud of that team and all that work that continues on.
Yeah, well, how fantastic. That's a great idea. And then how did you get introduced? I want you to talk about what the vision for Leading from Within is and how you were introduced to it. I wanted to read something, but it sounds like that Leading from Within was founded in 2008 to invest in renewal, leadership development, and peer community for experienced nonprofit executive leaders. Since then, more than 60 executive directors have participated in the year-long professional development program. How did you get introduced to Leading from Within?
So I was extremely fortunate to actually, at one of my low points, sort of reaching out for help. And a dear friend introduced me to our board chair and founder, Ken Saxon. We had coffee, and I just expressed everything that I was struggling with. He just sort of asked these questions that I just opened up, right? And you know, to be clear, this was at a few years in to starting BC Centro and working with the Bike Coalition, and things were tough. I was really burnt out, and it just didn't feel like things were happening enough. You know, it just didn't, like, that forward momentum wasn't quite happening. And Ken said, you know what? I think I have a program for you. And I was invited to apply to the Courage to Lead program, which really transformed the way I looked at the work and gave me the courage to push forward. And literally, for me, in that trajectory, in that work, meant the difference in me being able to lead and continue on the organization. And we made some of our best strides in those years after doing that program. Really?
Can you characterize, or not that you probably can't summarize something like that, but the Courage to Lead program, like, what is it? Like, what do you do?
Yeah. So Courage to Lead is based on an idea that for those of us who are in the sort of supportive or kind of social impact professions, things can get pretty lonely.
Right.
Like when you're an executive director, it tends to actually be a pretty lonely job.
Right.
You're responsible for a lot. Sometimes you have to make some hard decisions. You kind of have to please everybody, it seems.
Yeah.
And sometimes there's no energy left for you. And remembering why you're doing the whole thing in the first place.
Right.
And I really love the words of Roger Durling from the film festival. Roger said, you know, we think of ourselves as islands, but really there's this archipelago. How do you even say that?
Yeah, I know what you're saying.
Archipelago. Like there's this string of islands of leaders. Like we're here.
Right.
And we're here for each other, and we're going through similar challenges.
Yeah, right.
And just to be able to come together as a group of peers and be in retreat, really share each other's stories, and recharge our passion for our work.
Yeah.
Makes such a difference.
Such a good idea.
And these peer communities continue, right? So in addition to doing a program for a year and a half, once a season, once a quarter, we keep in touch. We continue to be a supportive peer community.
Wow.
And that makes such a difference for taking on challenges.
Yeah. So the community part sounds like the best, like one of the biggest parts.
Absolutely.
You go from being alone to being in community.
Absolutely.
With people who understand.
We have something that's just kind of like the ace up our sleeve, so to say. I think in terms of the impact that leading from within makes. We have 4 different programs, and people are familiar with executive coaching, right? Let's say you're navigating a tricky thing, running a business, and you can get a coach who has familiarity with that area, can help you as a thought partner. To think out the landscape and what the implications and help you kind of gain the confidence to make tough decisions. Well, executive coaching is also something that we help do for nonprofit leaders, and it's proved super valuable. But the peer learning, or what we call leader circles, are just as valuable, because sometimes it's your peers who can be some of the most supportive coaches.
Right.
Because they're already going through similar challenges, and you form this relationship and this trust. And we have over 100 peer leaders that continue to meet monthly.
Really?
With each other, sharing what's going on for them, getting support and questions in a way that kind of helps unlock challenges that people are facing.
Wow. So executive coaching, for-profit or nonprofit, peer, and then these peer groups.
Yeah, these peer learning communities.
Peer learning communities. So that's kind of that's the focus of leading from within?
In a sense, I call it, so the idea is let me back up and explain a little bit about leading from within. So Courage to Lead, the program that I did, was the first program that the organization took on, which is primarily for executive directors or senior leaders in nonprofit organizations, because there really wasn't much for folks like us. Right? It's kind of funny. Investment, who's in your corner?
Right.
Right. It's
no,
important.
I understand. Yeah.
And so that idea was really important. But then also, how are we investing in emerging leaders? How are we providing mentorship and support for board members and volunteer leaders in the community? Right? We want to have further support for folks in Santa Maria and northern Santa Barbara County. How can we bring more support there? So basically, leadership development programs is what Leading from Within does. But we don't stop there. We want to continue to support the community that we're trying to cultivate. So we have over 550 alumni.
Wow.
And we continue to try to make programming, things like peer learning communities, available to them. So that people know that even though you may have done this program 5 or 6 years ago, but we're still in your corner.
Right.
We want to support you in your work in the community.
That's really good. That's really good. Social, I don't know what the burnout rate is for social work, but it's high.
It is.
It's probably just below pastors. It's probably in that ballpark. But it really is, because you give and you give and you give, and the need doesn't go away. I mean, there's just so much to do. I mean, I don't know how you feel. That's how I feel. Like,
oh yeah,
there's so much to do, and you feel like you want to do it all, and then you end up at zero, and you're on the red lights flashing, empty. But it's a tricky thing.
So psychologically, how does one contend with when the issue they're working on might be more than they can ever solve? Right. It just can become overwhelming.
Yeah.
You need to have ways to kind of give you courage to face
Right.
that daunting challenge.
Yeah. And peers who are working on stuff that can give you perspective. I mean, I'm just spitballing here, but
Yeah.
But I mean, if somebody can give you perspective, like, well, you're making a difference. You may not conquer that mountain, but look what you're doing here, and look what you're doing there, and look what you're doing. You know,
Yeah.
that is really rich input.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and this is sort of the model. So we bring together cohorts of usually around 20 people, and that cohort's going to go through sort of a learning journey together over the course of a year. And then some of those relationships really stay quite robust. And, you know, we're primarily supporting individuals during the programs, and we continue to support them, but I think most of that support ends up being the peer community itself.
Huh. Wow. There's a couple of things that I was reading that you mentioned that I thought were fascinating. One is you talked about when you were burnt out, you were jaded. You know, I generally felt like there weren't enough resources to do the things I wanted to do. But then you said, for me, I went from a scarcity mentality to an abundance mentality.
Yeah.
Talk about that.
Oof.
That's a big one. We could do a show on that.
Absolutely. My joke a little bit is when you can realize all the resources that are available to you, and you can do the abundance. Right?
The abundance. That's good.
But so the challenge is, you know, I don't know if I'm really qualified to talk about such an important theme as this, but it's important to know limits and constraints, right? But if you're fixated on the limits and the problems and the barriers,
Right.
and you're not looking past them, and you're not looking at the opportunities, you're not going to be in a good position to solve problems.
Right. I agree. Yep.
And we're extremely fortunate, you know, the resources that we have in this community, the people that we have in this community.
Yeah.
And the challenge of any community leader, I think, is really to see those resources first. And I think that's the abundance.
Yeah.
And when we're seeing all of those resources, then we can see the challenges that we face.
Right. In that context.
In that context.
Right.
Knowing
Right.
that we have the means
That's so
to take on
good.
these challenges.
So good. There's a scripture that talks about the birds. You know, if I take care of the birds of the air, I'll take care of you. And so sometimes I watch birds because I sit out here. I have a cabana up there. It's my office. So sometimes I watch the birds, and it's amazing. They move around a lot. They're busy, but there's plenty. Like if you just look at my backyard, I mean, you look at, like, they're not thinking about shortages.
Yeah.
They're moving around, you know, they're busy, but they're finding everything that they need, which I think, I always think about why does that scripture talk about birds? But then when I actually start watching them, I'm like, I get it. I think I understand a little bit about what they're talking about, that there is plenty, you know, but it's just a matter of seeing it in that context versus this shortage, scarcity, I got to get mine, not going to have enough, fear, which in the nonprofit community, especially it can be a problem.
Oof. One of the big priorities for us, and I think that's something that the Santa Barbara nonprofit and social impact community is doing so well. So businesses, government, people are really putting together some collaborations that are astounding. And that happens when people are not acting out of fear,
Yeah.
when they're not feeling resource scarce,
Right.
primarily,
Territorial.
when people are acting out of love
Right.
and building trust
Yeah.
and creating things together.
Yeah. We can do so much more together. Yeah. It's so good. That's so true. So you're liking this. You're liking this work.
Oh,
I can see it. I can see it.
The ability to see all of these different great human beings that are taking on so even now, we're about to open one of our next programs, the Emerging Leaders, and we're taking applications. I'm about to review 45 applications.
Wow.
And it's so exciting because all of their stories are really compelling. And so, yes, to be in this position to support people in the way that I have had support in my leadership journey thus far, it's super meaningful.
That's wonderful. Well, it's great what you're doing. I read about it, but now hearing about it, I'm even more excited about it. That's really fantastic. Making a difference.
Dean, thank you so much. Thank you for being part of positive change in our community and helping highlight so many great things that are happening.
Yeah.
People just as you do.
Thank you. It's good to meet you. Thanks for coming. We'll see you next time.